trying to be what I'm destined to be. And niggas trying to take my life away. I put a hole in a nigga for fucking with me. My back on the wall, now you gon' see. Better watch how you talk when you talk about me. Cause I'll come and take your life away. Many men, many men wish death on me, Lord. I don't cry no more. Don't look to the sky no more. Have mercy on me. These pussy niggas put money on my head. Gone, get your refund, motherfucker. I ain't dead. I'm the diamond in the dirt that ain't been found. I'm the underground king, and I ain't been crowned. When I rhyme, something special happen every time. I'm the greatest. Something like I lead in this prime. I walk the block with the bundles. I've been out alone. Between the ops when I roll the show ass in the gun. Gotta tell a nigga, go ahead, lose your head. Turn your back on me, get clapped and lose your legs. I walk around, gun on my waist, chip on my
What it do? What it do? What it do, y'all? I'm your host with the motherfucking most chill motherfucking Murray, live from the Spot Podcast. Thanks for tuning in or not tuning in. You know how we do and how we rap. I hope my camera look nice. I got a different hue in this motherfucker that I'm not used to. And I put myself back on this side for a good reason. Because for some reason, I always look like I'm staring away from shit when I'm on the left side. And I'll be staring directly at the video and shit. But anyway, once again, special shout out to everybody. Teresa, Water, my Auntie Tazi. Shout out to Cushness, King Ozma, Fury B, Lyricist. I'm trying to think of everybody. And 411 and the whole fam here live from the Spot Podcast. Today, or this evening I should say, I did try to start a little bit earlier than 12 o'clock. I meant to start this bitch about 2 hours ago, but I got down my little rabbit hole, and Busta put me down a rabbit hole that I didn't think I was gonna get down. But we're gonna get to that also, cause tonight we are going to break down who killed Mr. Chris Lighty. A lot of people have some ideas. I'm here to debunk one of them. And the other one, we are here to confirm. There's a third theory that has also just arrived, but it ties in to the confirmation. And it is also very similar to Twitch's situation, ironically. Extremely similar to Twitch's situation. We'll get to that in a few. So, if you don't know who we're talking about, yesterday I put out the post that Chris Lighty, a lot of people are even speculating now this week that the Diddler has had something to do with Chris Lighty's death. Now, it feels like we all of us truth tellers caught the epiphany around the same time about this one. It really does. A lot of us caught the same the epiphany about Mr. Lighty around the same time. I noticed Tisha Tales put it out. Mims even started to speculate on it, and a couple of other people started to speculate on this very theory. But I noticed everyone was putting together the same exact motive. Everyone was putting together the same exact motive. And one thing I would like to do real quick is debunk that motive. Let me put myself over here to the multi-stream and make sure I can see everybody on YouTube. So, let's debunk that one thing real quick, right? And that would be the whole Kim Porter situation, right? Now, we're going to go to that evening. we're going to go to the evening of Kim Porter's birthday party and take a look at a group of pictures here from that same evening. All right. So, because the main thing that I would like to debunk is the fact that I do not believe, unless there is some actual hard evidence out there, I do not believe that, Kim Porter was dating Chris Lighty. I don't even think that was happening. Why is my window not coming up? Move this up a little bit. Let me see if that does that. Hold on 1 second. Not sure what's going on here. But yes, Kim Porter was not dating Chris Lighty. How we can also confirm that is the fact that Chris Lighty was married since 2003. Let's be clear on that as well. Chris Lighty was married since 2003, and of course, we don't know Kim Porter to be a side chick, do we? Let's just be honest here. We don't know Kim Porter to be a side chick, do we? Let's be honest. Now, we know how she deals with Diddy, but let's be honest. Even how she dealt with Diddy, I don't know why I did that. There we go. I don't know why I was messing with me for a second. So, this is Kim Porter's birthday party that evening, right? This is Chris Lighty here at the birthday party. Now, I believe this was 09? It was either 08 or 09 was the birthday party. And as you can see here, these two were still an item at the time. So, there's, like I said, a quick way to debunk the fact that Kim Porter and Chris Lighty did not, in fact, date. Number two reason you can also, debunk. Okay, this is not 08, excuse me. This is after, because this is after Shakir Stewart passes. This is about 09, 2010, actually. A little bit prior to Chris Lighty passing. So, at that birthday party, like I said, you can easily see that, Kim was still with Diddy at the time. At no given point in time, was Kim with Chris Lighty whatsoever. Because, like I said, that would have to also insinuate the fact that Chris was cheating on his wife. The only time that the divorce or separation even happened between Chris and his wife was 2011, the year before he passed. So that whole Chris Lighty dating Kim Porter thing, that wasn't the thing. That never happened. Especially if we're putting together the rumor that Kim dated Chris Lighty post Shakir Stewart. That definitely wouldn't have happened because that would have been in the later 2000s. Where, like I said, Chris Lighty is already married in 2003. And, like I said, a loyal husband to what we know. Of course, they had their fights back and forth, like the wife said. But he never cheated or anything like that. There was no, like I said, there's no sign of Kim Porter being a side chick. So I just wanted to quickly debunk that one little rumor there and that motive that the Diddler had something to do with Chris Lighty's death based upon the Kim Porter rumor. Kim Porter ain't have shit to do with Chris Lighty's death. Let's just debunk that whole thing. Okay? all her exes ended up dealing with Diddy. Um, that's partially true as well. Partially true as well. Partially true as well. But at the same time, like I said, the only thing with that is, at what point in time was she even with Chris? If Chris was already married. So let's move on to when Diddy actually signed to Violator Management. Which, when I saw that, of course, I'm saying to myself, okay, he went to Violator Management, right? But why would he go to Violator Management? He goes there the same reason. Now, when I read this, I caught the same exact feeling that I caught when I read that he had went back to Motown for Neff and Few. And now, excuse me, then we got Neff and Few, and we got Quavo and Takeoff the same exact month and week, actually, that he signed back with Motown. And I said, why would he sign to Violator in the first place if he has his own entertainment label? Not just record label. He has his own entertainment label, which means he has management within the label. Why are you signing to another management company with your group? I'm a little confused by that. But there's Chris Lighty's Violator Management signs Sean Diddy Combs. And this was back in 2006. Chris Lighty, CEO of Violator Management, announced today an agreement with Sean Diddy Combs to handle the music career for the international successful artist, producer, designer, and entrepreneur. Lighty and his team will begin strategic work immediately on Diddy's Billboard #1 album, Press Play, released October 17th on Diddy's own Bad Boy Entertainment label. Let me also correct myself too in the 2006 because I'm not sure about that particular. Let me do this real quick. So, Press Play. Let's go to Press Play. Where's Press Play at? Okay, yes, 2006. So, just wanted to clarify that real quick. So, with Diddy already successful as a huge brand and in and of himself, Violator's marketing arm will take on a new risk for the globally recognized figure. The company will specifically implement brand extension plans intended to expand Diddy's reach and influence exponentially in music. Violator Management is a multimedia management, marketing, brand development, and entertainment company whose clients include 50 Cent, Missy Elliott, Busta Rhymes, LL, 3 6 Mafia, and Fantasia. So, now, here's the thing, right? Like I said, why on earth, if Diddy already has this within his own hub, my question is, what on earth does he even need Violator Management for? That was the first thing that raised my antenna there. What on earth is Diddy? And of course, this is during the Press Play time. So, just to, of course, put context to this, if we're talking about the Press Play time, of course, right? We're talking about the album where he would have, let me just go to a couple of images of the Press Play. So, let me see, Press Play Party. Diddy. You put it back this way. Matter of fact, I'll just show you guys real quick on YouTube. So, the party that they threw, let me see. Was it going to show me right here, actually? So, there was the famous Press Play Party is actually, see what shows me. Remember the famous Frosted Flakes? It was the same party. It was the launch party. See? The Dirty Money hosted by Kevin Hart. Dirty Money was the group that Press Play was that the album was about, basically. It was Diddy was doing his old Dirty Money thing at the time. So like I said, I'm sitting here saying to myself, what does he even need a label for if he has his own? if we're thinking about why he even needs a label, right? Let's think about this. Chris dies 6 years later after he even starts managing Diddy. Just 6 years after. Now, of course, nobody really believed this. Nobody really believed the fact that Chris Lighty even took his own life. A lot of people were basically speculating on this whole theory.
Chris Lighty's death is labeled a suicide.
Right.
I can't live with that.
I can't fathom that because it's the first I seen with the G-Wagon. This the first I seen get fly. You know what I'm saying? This the first where we used to come to Violator. That's when it was, you know, they had Busta, they had Diddy, they had Foxy. I'm coming there, you see Freeway, you see Nori. This is the first that was somebody. So I could never ever see Chris doing something to himself. And he's always gonna get money because when it comes to that G-Unit brand and that 50 brand, Chris Lighty and Violator play a major part in that.
And that's the thing. That is the whole thing. Chris Lighty was such a positive light to a lot of people. Once again, I keep saying and emphasizing the fact that this is very similar to Twitch's situation, to where Twitch was such a very positive light and energy to a lot of people. But in Chris Lighty's particular situation, he was also the advisor and manager of a lot of people. He managed lives. He helped a lot of stars among the Missy Elliott's, the Mariah Careys, the Diddys, the 50 Cents, the Busta Rhymes. He managed superstar lives. That's a lot to carry on your back, okay? No. That's the other thing. He did not leave a suicide note. But he left a will, which we'll get into. And so, of course, like I said, nobody believed the fact that he killed himself, including 50 Cent.
One of my favorite guests. Never a dull moment.
Never.
When the guy 50 Cent is in the building.
Yeah, man, yeah, baby.
Curtis Jackson, ladies
New
and
York,
gentlemen.
what's up?
Curtis Jackson is our guest today. 50 Cent is here. Hello, Fifth.
Real quick.
Production bill look like, my lord.
Like $1 million a year.
So when the song comes out, is there a video on either party?
Well, no, we were actually scheduled to shoot a video, and then
Put words or thoughts into your mouth.
I've worked with Chris the entire time, Angie.
No, I know.
Like the actual mixtape run, everything, and
like every day, daily.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, you know, I mean, he's had the opportunity to work with a lot of other people in different time periods, like at the same time. Like, he'd work with Busta. He never would break that relationship because their relationship is like brothers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that he's like, nah, I got to do that. And then you know, like that there was opportunities. Like, I think the Soulja Boy relationship is really coming from me.
Yeah.
And the Soulja wouldn't even listen to them. Like, I had to get on the phone with him, like, yo, you got to do this, B. And then he kind of got into...
No, but we absolutely, everybody, I mean, within the business or whatever, people absolutely associated you and Chris.
Yeah, yeah. And the deals, the brand extension and deals that my portfolio is what offered reasoning to Warner Brothers for brand assets. For the company he created to do the extensions between other artists. And
right. So how do you deal with something like this? You get a loss, an unexpected
it's a huge adjustment. And then you got to take into account, do you want to hire new management, or do you want to hire an internal person that does corporate brand management?
Right.
And deal with everything on the outskirts. Like, Puff would work with Chris and have him deal with his music business. He dealt with the rest of his business.
So that was an interesting tidbit there. The fact that Chris Lighty actually was the main person that was handling the actual quote-unquote music business portion for Diddy. Think about that. Someone that has spent already, 10, 15 years, maybe even 20 years in the business, Diddy himself, needed someone to manage his music business? Really? Someone with that much experience ahead of Chris Lighty or should I say almost the same amount as experience as Chris Lighty, needed someone to manage his business. What was the real reason that Diddy even needed Chris Lighty around? And for 50 be saying that with a smile, 50 definitely knows something else between Diddy and Chris Lighty that was going on as far as Chris Lighty, quote unquote, managing the music business for Diddy.
Right.
In-house, so his staff and everybody else that was there would be a part of that process. And then you...
Right, because for somebody like you, it's like twofolds. It's right. It's like somebody that you knew personally.
Right.
So from a personal perspective, I'm sure you feel a million different ways about what happened.
Absolutely. Like, I don't believe... I honestly can't wrap my head around the idea of him shooting himself. You know, so... I mean, I don't have all the information, so I don't ever, point or say anything other than what's being said publicly.
Right.
But I don't believe that. You know,
even
just
you
because
don't
my
believe that
personal
that's what
interactions with him,
Right.
and it's never gave an indication that was even possible. You know, like the first thing I see is he owes $5 million, and he doesn't owe $5 million. I'm sure he doesn't actually owe $300,000. And he wasn't in a hurry to pay. Like, it's not like vacation that there was ever a point that the vacation was being missed.
Right.
And lifestyle, there's like, I get to that when I get to that. And then away from that, when the $5 million bill was there, I gave him $1 million. I loaned him $1 million that he paid me back. And the interest on it was another $200,000. So take that 5, turn that into 6.2. And then say it's down to $300,000. Ain't no reason to do that over money. You know what I'm saying? At that point, you done took care of all your bills.
Right.
So it just, none of it made any sense to me, because of that.
So think about that. If he didn't actually owe any money at the time that he actually died, Fifth is actually breaking down the fact that he did not have any financial woes. There was ups and downs as far as that actually went. Years later down the line, some people would actually disclose the fact that there were some possibilities that he was in financial woes. But at the time, 50 Cent himself disclosed publicly, like, hey, he did not owe any money. And if he did owe any money, I would have taken care of it. Which we all know, this is 50 Cent at peak 50 Cent almost. This isn't yet $400 million 50 Cent, but this is well on his way. Vitamin Water 50 Cent, Diamond 50 Cent, even if you could, if we're talking about the millions of records he sold. 50 was not in a broke situation to where he couldn't help Chris Lighty himself. In fact, with all the superstars that were around Chris Lighty, there would have been no need for him to even owe $5 million anywhere. With all the money and millions of dollars he's made for the other artists, he could have easily gotten that same collateral from one of them. And 50 himself has already admitted publicly, including in this interview, if he needed $5 million or even that $300,000, Fifth could have gave that out of his back pocket.
And then just all of the unanswered questions, whenever you're in the gray areas because something ain't really right.
How do you deal with that?
I try not to think about it. I try to move forward, and because what's ill is, for me, I'll develop
Anger?
Yeah, and it's more like, because I'm used to responding to something. If somebody does something to me in any way make me uncomfortable, I respond by making them more uncomfortable. And then maybe it gives them an example and it says, leave me alone. And then, like, when they stop, I know to stop, because I know what happens when we go completely head to head. It's always a bad outcome. But I offer reasoning for them to not come playing around me. And then in this case, you just go, well, there's nobody to really offer that to.
You just want to be mad, but then what do you...
Yeah, who can I give it to?
Who can you... Right. What's going to happen to Violator?
That's over.
It's over.
To me, that's over. Like, there's nobody
that could take that over. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was the experience and just how long you've been involved that it makes you respond to things differently. Like, if you say, like, how long you've been in your profession, there's nobody that, like, you don't really see. There's not an easy replacement in your slot. The time of the day, if you decide to just go, they'd be trying to figure out how to fix that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
it was crazy because even at the funeral, I've known Chris since the tunnel. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, over the years, I haven't seen him as much. You guys been busy,
working.
But it was interesting, and I don't know, a little comforting, but also like at the services, hearing everybody's stories and how much he meant to everybody, and how much of an influence he has had in this business in so many different ways that maybe I know about you and I know about Tip and Busta, but to hear all the different stories and all the stuff and hearing Red Alert talk about him carrying records back in the day, and
you know what was interesting about that, like, because like Busta, like the things that he said was really good to me.
Yeah, Busta was speaking on behalf of Chris, and he was telling stories that Chris has been holding him down for so long, and all they wanted to do is get this money, and they finally got it. And then Busta spent it all. And then he called Chris, and Chris would help him get it again.
And he'd do it again.
And he'd do it again.
And that was the type of person that Chris Lighty was. He would always help others get money. He would help celebrity after celebrity get money that he was dealing with, even people that wasn't on Violator. That's how he got his endorsements to even get up the money for Violator. He had endorsement after endorsement from people that he helped. He was a good investor. He was a good person, all in all. So a person like that, of course, has a star-studded
Excuse us. Make way, please. Excuse us.
Did anyone notice the stern face on Puff versus the face that was on 50? Did anyone notice this cold, stern face that was on him?
Excuse us.
Yeah, right now.
But what stood out to me the most, of course, is Lauryn Hill, is when they got, of course, like I said, the first two people they showed were 50 and Diddy. And once again, look how Diddy's just moving through the crowd, doesn't really want to talk to anybody.
Excuse us.
He pretty much just got his guy and got out of there.
Excuse us. Make way, please. Excuse us.
Almost as if he's like, all right, I paid my respects. It's time for me to go. If you ask me, like I said, when I see things like that, and I hope the body language guy analyzes that particular video one day. Because if you ask me, when I see things like that, and knowing what I already know about the diddler, and I see that stern face just moving through the crowd, just moving people out, like, hey, let's get out of here, let's go. I see things like that. It definitely raises a rock eyebrow. Because you were said to be the person that, you know, there was a whole article on you paying tribute to him, Diddy. But the article that was being pushed was not the article that, you know, or should I say campaign, that you would expect to see or hear from, you know, a person supposedly paying tribute to somebody. Now, what I mean by that is, let us refer to this article here from E-News Weekly. Well, E-News Online, I should say. Now, E-News Online says, the Diddler pays tribute, right? Not cool. Hip-hop mogul's former manager died August 30th from apparent suicide. Gone but not forgotten. Rather than grieve the death of his former manager in solitude, Sean Diddy Combs paid tribute to his late friend Chris Lighty with hundreds of partygoers at his annual Labor Day bash in Las Vegas Saturday night. We don't do moments of silence. We do 3 seconds of noise, the hip-hop mogul said as the crowd erupted in cheers in honor of Lighty. We don't do moments of silence. We do 3-second roars. 3 seconds of noise. Huh, Diddy? 3 seconds of noise. So you did not grieve Chris Lighty at all. In fact, you saying 3 seconds of noise instead of a moment of silence, that ain't no different than your Cassie apology video. If I'm being real here. That is no different than your Cassie apology video. We don't do moments of silence. We do 3 seconds of noise.
See, little shit like that lets me further know what it is you really do.
Because you would think a person with, 6 years you spent with this gentleman, you would think you would have just a little bit more respect for him. Including even at his funeral, So that made me think about something. You celebrating his death as if, it was some type of reward for you at the end of this rainbow. And if you didn't do it over Kim Porter, if you didn't do it for Kim Porter, what would be the actual reason that you would have Chris Lighty killed? Could it be if you were doing a favor for someone? And that's when the light bulb went off in my head. Are you doing a favor for someone? Because the only possible favor that you could be doing for someone, Diddy, would be Jimmy Henchman. You and Jimmy Henchman work hand in hand together. I don't think a lot of people remember just how much hand in hand you two niggas go.
The streets have always had ties to the rap game, but Jimmy Henchman is one of the scariest dudes to ever be involved with the industry. He allegedly almost killed Tupac and 50 Cent, and right now, he's serving 2 life sentences for murder and trafficking. Today, we're breaking down the wild and brutal story of why people in the rap game are still terrified of him. Let's get right into it. Jimmy Henchman was born in Harlem but raised in Flatbush, Brooklyn. As a young kid in the streets, he ran with the crew called the Untouchables, and Jimmy wanted to make a name for himself in the trenches. He already had 2 gun charges by the time he was 16, and he ended up dropping out of school and spending a year on Rikers Island. And after being home for less than a year, he was booked for another shooting. Henchman made bail on the gun charge, but ended up catching a homicide case just a few months later. He pleaded guilty to the gun charge and got the murder case dismissed, but he still got hit with a 5 to 10 year sentence. When he was in prison, Jimmy linked up with a Black Panther leader named Richard Moore, who convinced him to go back to school and educate himself. So by the time Henchman was released in 1988, he had an associate's degree and was ready to take on the streets in a smarter way. Henchman spent 3 years hustling in the crack game. Then, one of his homies introduced him to the music industry. Around the same time, Tupac was becoming one of the hottest rappers in the world. He wasn't a superstar yet, but everyone knew that's where he was headed, and Henchman wanted to become his manager. Pac turned him down, and what Henchman did next changed the history of the entire rap game. One of Henchman's homies is a known dealer named Haitian Jack. According to rumors, Biggie warned Pac not to get involved with Jack, but Pac didn't listen. Everyone knows that Biggie and Pac ended up starting the biggest war in rap history, but back in the day, they were actually tight.
Now, they're going to actually show this too, so pay attention. If you remember back in the Biggie movie, they actually showed the moment that Haitian Jack was introduced to Tupac. And right after that, they showed the depiction of the Quad Studios shooting, which they were going to actually show right here.
But after Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman got involved, everything changed. Pac met Henchman through Haitian Jack. Even though Pac didn't want to be managed by him, Henchman allegedly offered him $7,000 to hop on a track with his artist Lil Sean. Pac was fighting a sexual abuse case at the time and needed the cash, so he headed to Quad Studios in Times Square with his homie Stretch and a couple of other dudes, Puffy and Biggie.
This is the depiction from the actual movie.
You were up in the studio too, but Pac didn't get the chance to link up. When he walked into the lobby, 3 dudes jumped out to rob and shoot him. After the Quad Studio shooting, Tupac accused Puffy, Biggie, Henchman, and others of being involved with setting them up. That night sparked a beef between him and Biggie, which eventually led to the war between the East and West Coast and ended with both of them being killed. Pac aired Henchman out on the track Against All Odds and said, "Promise to pay back Jimmy Henchman in due time. I know you is listening, the world is mine. Set me up, wet me up, stuck me up. Heard the guns bust, but your tricks never shut me up."
So let's now keep that in mind. So we have now the big link of Diddy and Jimmy Henchman, right? So let's keep in mind Diddy is working with Jimmy Henchman since early back in the day of the days of Tupac, and we all know how Diddy and Tupac's beef was.
Henchman always denied being involved, but in 2011, his homie Dexter Isaac claimed that Jimmy paid him to rob Tupac. Isaac had known Henchman since they were teenagers, and right now, he's serving a life sentence for other crimes. According to him, Henchman gave him $2,500 to rob Tupac and let him keep all the jewelry they snatched except one ring, which Henchman wanted to keep for himself. He also said that Stretch helped them and that Henchman gave Stretch a quarter brick of cocaine to line his homie up. Stretch ended up getting murdered a year later, and Pac sent shots at him on Against All Odds with the line, "And that nigga that was down for me, resting dead. Switch sides, guess his new friends wanted him dead." Henchman still denied everything after Isaac told his side of the story, but then he allegedly admitted to being involved while he was confessing in an unrelated drug case.
Notice how Jimmy Henchman is always known for turning your best friend against you also. Keep that in mind as well. Jimmy Henchman is pretty much known for having someone close to you be the person that actually gets you set up. Keep that information in mind.
Jimmy was never charged with the Quad Studios shooting, but later, he ended up in the middle of an even crazier beef. When Henchman went to war against 50 Cent and G-Unit, there were shootings, assaults, and a brutal murder that led to him getting his second life sentence. In the early 2000s, Henchman was managing the Game. Game had been signed by Dr. Dre, who linked up with 50 Cent, and back then, it looked like they were going to take over the whole game together. Both of them were at the height of their careers, and the collab seemed like a huge win, but it didn't take long for everything to fall apart. According to Henchman, 50 was mad that the Game was popping off so much as a solo artist, and when Game went hopping into all of 50's beef with other rappers, 50 cut him out of G-Unit and sparked their legendary beef.
Now, while we're on the Game, let's also tie in the fact that a certain somebody was also running with Diddy for quite some time before he signed to Dr. Dre, wasn't he? Remember when Game kept saying that he was running around with Diddy and he didn't record any records, he just did nothing but partying with Diddy? And at the time, who was also managing Game? Jimmy Henchman.
Most rap fans know all about how the Game and 50 ended up getting into a shootout in New York, but there was something even crazier going on at the same time that a lot of people have no clue about. In 2007, 50's homie Tony Yayo and another rapper named Lighty Mac ran into Jimmy Henchman's 14-year-old son, Lil Henchman, on the street. According to rumors, Lil Henchman was wearing a G-Unit shirt, so Lighty and Yayo pressed him over it. They pushed him up against the wall, and Yayo allegedly started slapping him. Then, Lodi Mack took it a step further and pistol whipped the kid. Yayo and Lodi were both booked on assault charges, but Yayo's case was eventually dismissed. But before he even went to court, Yayo's mother's house was shot up, and pretty much everyone believes Henchman was behind it. Yayo talks about it on the track Straight Outta Southside and said, "Yeah, y'all motherfuckers shot my mama crib up. My sister, my niece in there.
Now, also, the reason why I'm letting this play out is because it's going to be very important information when we remember Lodi Mack later on when we're talking about Jimmy Henchman and Chris Lighty.
And y'all here for $500. I'm gonna be in London, motherfucker." Lodi Mack pleaded guilty to aggravated assault over the Lil Henchman case and was sentenced to a couple of years in prison. But while he was behind bars, the beef in the streets was just heating up. The same year that Yayo and Lodi Mack put hands on his kid, Jimmy Henchman tried to take 50 and Yayo out while they were filming a music video. 50 was filming the video for his collab track with Akon, I'll Still Kill, when Henchman and his goons rolled up with silenced guns. But before they could hop out and start shooting, one of the guns went off in the whip and they ended up just leaving the scene.
It was the filming of the 50 Cent and Akon I'll Still Kill video.
Oh. On the paperwork, and Henchman and them were supposed to come through, and I guess they gun jammed, but we had God on that side, and they backed out on the hit, but we had straps too, and that really was really it.
You said they had silencers?
Yeah.
And this was part of the actual report that came out?
Yeah.
If Henchman's people started letting off shots, it would have turned into a full-on shootout because everyone in the G-Unit crew was strapped too. But luckily, nobody died that day because someone with Henchman didn't know how to handle their gun. There's also rumors that Henchman had 50's house burned down, but there's no evidence to back it up. But what we do know is that when Lodi Mack was released in 2009, he was murdered in the middle of the street just 2 weeks later. Everyone connected Henchman to the murder immediately, but it took years before he was officially charged. While the cops were working on the Lodi Mack case, Henchman ended up going down on a totally different charge. In 2010, he was booked on cocaine trafficking, money laundering, and witness tampering. According to the prosecution, Henchman was running a massive drug ring that operated from the east to west coast and was bringing him in over $11 million per year. Henchman and his crew would ship drugs from LA to New York, then ship cash back to LA from New York after it was sold. They didn't have to use their own vehicles to move weight either. Instead, they covered everything in mustard to throw off drug dogs and shipped it through FedEx and UPS. Jimmy was handed down a life sentence, and the judge said his crimes were astonishing in their breadth, duration, and intensity. While he was locked up on the drug charges, Henchman was charged for the death of Lodi Mack in 2012. His own shooters flipped on him, and there were over 35 witnesses in the trial. And in 2014, he was found guilty and got hit with another life sentence. Part of the reason why Henchman went down is because his own people turned on him. But according to rumors, he was an informant too and helped the feds put other dealers behind bars. Henchman and his lawyer have called cap on the story, but 50 Cent says the same thing. Most rap fans know that a drug dealer in Queens, known as Kenneth Supreme McGriff, is the dude who allegedly had 50 shot 9 times back in the day. McGriff is also serving a life sentence on a murder for hire case right now, and obviously, him and 50 aren't friends. But even though Supreme tried to have him killed, 50 gives him more credit than Henchman, because according to him, Supreme stayed down with the streets and never snitched.
I don't like Supreme. I don't like priming him, but he lived the way he actually projected himself. His lifestyle is consistent.
He was true to it.
He never ratted on nobody.
But Henchman told on everyone.
And Jimmy's a different kind of guy. He told on everybody. He solved the last 10 years of criminal activity in New York City in 10 minutes.
Henchman has been behind bars for over a decade, but some people are afraid that he might not be there for long. According to reports, Donald Trump planned on cutting Henchman's sentence short before he left office and said, "Let's get this guy home for Christmas." The official pardon never came, but now Henchman's lawyer says his sentence no longer exists because of what Trump allegedly said. It's been 2 years since they started fighting to get him out, but as of right now, it doesn't look like there's been any movement in the case. Henchman might end up spending the rest of his life in prison, but if he gets lucky and is granted an early release, anybody who crossed him will need to watch their backs.
So, that's the thing, right? If Jimmy Henchman was to so-called be released, even though he's serving 2 life sentences, basically, I don't think he's coming home. Even if Trump does pardon him, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily think the judicial system is going to let a nigga like him home. I'm just saying. But anyway, as far as Jimmy Henchman goes, what if I told you that Chris Lighty, the killing of Chris Lighty, allegedly, was actually a favor to Jimmy Henchman for Pac? You just saw the picture again of Diddy and Jimmy Henchman, right? As they were talking about Jimmy Henchman going down for a completely different charge and then getting charged later for the murder, right? Let's think about this, right? There's already confirmation from the rumors that Diddy is also an informant, right? So, being that Diddy was being an informant at the time, let's be honest. If I were Diddy, and you were being our informant, and there was another person that I was working with that was a quote-unquote informant, right? But I actually owed him a large favor. Even though I did this favor, I also wanted to clean my hands that I did this favor as well as the other favor. Wouldn't I, do my informant thing and get rid of this guy too? Think about that. If Jimmy Henchman was a so-called informant as well as Diddy was, how did he still end up going down for drugs and a whole drug ring as well as the murders if he was an informant? Wouldn't another informant have to take you down to know all this? But like I said, what if I told you that the Chris Lighty killing was a favor owed to Jimmy Henchman from Diddy? And that Diddy just helped set up the killing for Chris Lighty by going to Violator management. Now, how does one, get a favor? Right? How is it that Diddy owes Jimmy Henchman a favor? Well, Gene Deal has a better idea on how he owes that favor.
Eric Von Zip, you said that you seen him with a check for $1 million after Tupac got killed. What's the deal behind that, man?
I don't know of any truth about that whole situation. You understand? If Puff would have gave Von Zip a check for $1 million, that's traceable. You understand? What I tried to tell people is that I saw a check for $1 million that Von Zip showed us in which he said he got for Black Ground Records. He sold Black Ground Records. I don't know how true it is. He said Barry Hankerson and Jimmy, what's his name? He's in jail. Barry Hankerson and Jimmy Henchman. Sorry about that. Jimmy Henchman gave him a check for $1 million for Black Ground Records. Now, what I said is this. I didn't know of Zip having a record label. Now, I've been to Zip house. I've been to Zip's studio over 118th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenue. Was it 1st and 2nd Avenue or 1st and Yard? Oh, over there. He had a studio in there in the basement and everything like that. But I had known that he had some record label. So now I said, this is what I said. The prosecutor, they do a trace on that check and that company. Was that company worth $1 million when he sold it? Why did they give him a check for the company? How long was the company put in existence that he sold? And was it worth $1 million?
So Jimmy Henchman actually gave the $1 million for the Pac hit. That's the confirmation right there. on top of Diddy already working with Jimmy Henchman, the $1 million that was supposedly given to Keefe D and Zip from Diddy actually came from Jimmy Henchman.
That's what I would do as an investigator. Did he ever make $1 million deposit from anybody in the record business? Puff was friends with Jimmy Henchman. So did he make any kind of deals with them? Follow the money. So now if Zip had a company, was it worth $1 million? How long was the company in existence? Why would they give him $1 million for that company? That's what I would do and figure out. Then I'll go to the people who wrote the check and ask them, why did you write a check to Zip for his company for $1 million when it was only worth $3,500? I'm just messing with you, but you understand what I'm saying?
You do see how people could take that chicken for Tupac getting killed, right? Because, I mean, according to Keefe D, Von Zip is the one that provided him the gun that killed Tupac. And you saying that after Tupac got killed, you seen Von Zip with a check for $1 million.
Well, Zip was a hustler. You understand what I'm saying? And I said it 1,000 times, he could talk a water out of well. I mean, a well out of water. You know what I mean? He could talk a well out of water. And he had more game than Kellogg's had flakes. So if he found a way to get $1 million out of somebody based on that, he's the one that could do it.
So, in hindsight, Jimmy Henchman and Diddy allegedly co-conspirated $1 million hit on Tupac, right? So let's couple that information. Let's now fast forward together with the fact that Jimmy Henchman and Diddy worked together. So how does this tie in with Chris Lighty? Well, guess who has beef with Jimmy Henchman later on?
The nigga with more money is gonna always win, stupid. They gonna report to the rich nigga. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that nigga Henchman so cheap, he putting work on niggas' head. I got half a brick on your head. Get them niggas cash, my nigga. That's a half a brick. Get them niggas cash. Fifth knew that. That's why I like Fifth, because he let his nuts hang, nigga. No homo. He ain't one of them scared ass, y'all nigga got to work on you. Because the nigga that got bread, somebody gonna always hit him. These niggas are powerful out here, bro.
Well, why does it come to this shit, though, bro? Why does it come to this shit? You been through it.
Why does he? This nigga act crazy, like he don't know the history. This is what get me mad with him.
Nah, I know the history.
So let me ask you a question. Who is a pillar of hip hop? Chris Lighty.
Right.
Who wanted to be like Chris Lighty? Jimmy Henchman.
Yeah.
What did Jimmy Henchman do?
You said
Move on the same block as Chris Lighty. Who did Chris Lighty have? LL, Diddy, Free, 50, Busta. He ran the tunnel at 18. Who did Henchman want to be? Chris Lighty. Who was we down with? Chris Lighty. Beef is inherited. Stop playing, nigga. What the fuck is wrong with this nigga?
Beef is inherited. Yo, you
so our beef was... Nigga, our beef with Henchman came from fucking Chris Lighty, nigga.
So, the entire time, everyone was probably thinking, even though we were just looking at the video just now, I know a lot of you were saying to yourselves, you know, G-Unit was beefing with Jimmy Henchman. Yeah, we already knew that. But how many of you knew that the actual beef came from just 50 Cent signing to Chris Lighty? 50 didn't even have an initial problem with Jimmy Henchman, other than the fact that Supreme Griff had the problem with Jimmy Henchman, had the partnership with Jimmy Henchman. So, yes, the beef was inherited, but the beef was already there for Chris Lighty. Yale just confirmed it. Yes, Supreme had allegedly 50 shot back in the day. But that entire thing had nothing to do with Jimmy Henchman. The 9 shots, nothing to do with Jimmy Henchman. That entire, all the shootout at Hot 97, everything, all of that came from 50 Cent signing with Chris Lighty. So what does that tell you already? Chris Lighty was a little bit more in the street than what people actually knew.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
Why would you want to move on the same nigga block? That's like me doing my podcast next door. Am I right for that? Or you gonna want to smoke me? Come on, man. Lighty's on 25th. Where Henchman move? Right by the 40-40 next door.
Yeah,
Stop playing, Murder. You even fucking know, nigga. Because you was signing Chris Lighty, nigga. You know Henchman hated on Lighty the whole time. That's the problem with these industry niggas.
Where that
Y'all always
animosity
fucking
came
hate.
from? Where they come from? Where they come from, though, yeah?
How the fuck would I know, nigga?
I never knew that. It's probably before
I'm not no
them.
industry nigga. I just
Probably
started coming
before
in the
them.
game.
Probably before Yayo, they
Come
could
on,
have had
nigga.
a problem before G-Unit.
See, niggas thought Chris Lighty was a bitch nigga. He was an industry nigga. Started hanging with niggas like 50, murder amping them, battery in his back. Yo, you ain't pussy. He ran the tunnel at 17. Chris Lighty done shot the fair one with Jimmy Henchman. This mad shit y'all niggas don't know, nigga.
Nah, I know that.
That's why I hate when niggas get on here and talk about niggas they don't know.
Red Alert said right
Come on,
here.
nigga.
So, interesting tidbit there that Yayo let out but didn't get into detail with. Jimmy Henchman and Chris Lighty actually went fisticuffs back in the day at the tunnel. There was a huge rumor about that Chris Lighty actually smacked Jimmy Henchman back in the day. So wouldn't it be ironic hearing a story about Little Henchman getting smacked by Lodi Mac when it was actually just a quote-unquote almost parody-like of when Jimmy Henchman got smacked by Chris Lighty?
Lighty was that deal.
Yeah,
Gave him his
Nigga
flowers.
was 17, 18,
He
running
said
the
the same
most
thing.
violent club in New York City. You couldn't even wear jewelry.
Red Alert said
Niggas
everything
don't-
you saying.
I ain't. That's
He
why
said
I'm
he was
saying.
getting down. He was
Niggas
fighting.
don't know nothing about his life.
Why you couldn't wear jewelry?
In the
Niggas
tunnel?
In the tunnel, yeah.
Why you
Tunnel
couldn't wear
was
jewelry?
crazy.
I'm leaving it alone, man. This nigga.
You're mad
Why you
at
couldn't wear
ill
jewelry?
nigga.
No,
I'll
I
fact
want
like
him
you
to
don't
point at his hat. That's why.
Oh.
Point at your hat.
Because of Brooklyn?
Yeah,
No.
facts. Facts.
Yeah.
Those niggas from all over, Bronx.
Facts. No.
Not no hater shit. Like, niggas gotta stop picking and choosing. Like, niggas been heard Henchman was a rat back in the days telling niggas they're gonna escape from jail. Like, niggas be picking and choosing. Y'all rap niggas, y'all industry niggas, y'all pick and choose. That's why I don't give a fuck. You don't gotta fuck with me, you don't gotta like me, I don't care. And I feel better about myself about that. Because I don't care.
So you saying Tekashi?
So, J.O. basically was letting out a lot of frustration in that interview. And that was a very important interview. And, you know, sometimes, you know, shout out to Math Hoffa, but sometimes I do wish that interviewers and hosts were a little bit more informed when guests like that are divulging information. Because that was one of those times where you probably could have got a lot more out of Yayo than what he was divulging. But he would get into it just a little bit more in detail of how the beef was actually inherited.
I mean, when you found out years later that there was essentially a potential hit that could have happened in your vicinity, and you probably would have been one of the main targets.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, that's what I chose. Like I said, Fifth is my man, and I don't want to, bring Fifth up all the time in every interview. Shout out to him, but I don't, I want to talk about me and, you putting my trail out to my new podcast, Welcome to the Culture, or my weed strand coming. Shout out to We Work and Burner, Passport Boys, or the movies coming and the books. I want to talk about that. But when you talk about that, that's all out there. The gun jam, I guess they backed out the head. God is good.
What was interesting, I never really knew this, was that G-Unit, and you said this, that G-Unit inherited the Jimmy Henchman beef because of Chris Lighty.
Of course.
And you guys were managed by Chris Lighty, and I guess Chris Lighty and Jimmy never got along.
You think Chris Lighty would have been sticking his chest up like this if it wasn't for us being around? Not saying he was a punk. Look. Listen.
Chris Lighty has a background.
No. I know he has a background in the tunnel, and he done seen niggas get thrown through the tunnel windows. But now you got 50 Cent and G Unit around you, niggas that's ready to, at that point when niggas ain't had no consequential thinking. So at that point, it's like, Fifth is the type of nigga to be like, fuck Henchman. So if he got that energy around, fuck Henchman, Chris like, yeah, fuck Henchman. Not saying he wouldn't did it if we wasn't around, but he had that energy around where niggas was like, fuck him. Like, I done been backstage, Fifth, don't even say nothing to Henchman. Niggas like that feel like they, deserve respect because they OGs or what you put in the street, and every OG feel like that. But at the end of the day, these young niggas don't give a fuck about what I did back in the days. We all get older, and nigga will be like, well, I don't give a fuck about Yayo. And I'm aware of that, so I move away a certain way I move. Some young niggas might not want to hear shit.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
And I understand, and it's cool, because there was a point where we didn't want to hear shit. It's cool. The tables turn, that's just how life is. But I'm just telling you is that niggas always ran around like, fuck niggas. Like, it is what it is. And it's better to be in your little circle. You live longer like that. You ain't gotta, the grass is cut low. You can see the snakes. Keep your circle small. You don't need a whole entourage of niggas that potentially want to line you up or fuck your girl or your baby mother or want your shine or want to be like you. Or some people are like that. Some people around are not your friends. They're opportunists. Some people friends.
You see how Yayo was saying that subliminally? You see how he was saying that subliminally? Some people are just your friends. Some people want to line you up. Wonder why Yayo was saying that until I came across some rather interesting clips from the Henchman court case, in fact, in which Abdullah was testifying about Chris Lighty and his family were being set up by people that were actually around him at the time. Now, one of those people, if we're thinking about the timeline of things, Diddy was also being managed by Chris Lighty at the time, remember? So, who was close to Jimmy Henchman that would have been giving information? You know?
Did anything else happen with respect to the slap? Objection. Sustained. You mentioned that Jimmy had his son's mother press charges. What did you mean by that? He had him press charges against a dude who assaulted his son? Criminal charges? Criminal. Were there any other charges? A lawsuit was filed. Do you know what happened to that lawsuit? It was dismissed. Now, you testified previously that Chris Lighty was the manager of G Unit. Have you ever seen Chris Lighty in person? Yes. When did you see him? Last time was at a New Year's Eve party. We was all at some hotel in Miami. When was that? Obviously New Year's Eve, but do you know what year? 07 going to 08, I think. Who was at that party? Just a bunch of family and friends. Was Jimmy there? Yes. Anyone else that you recall? Teddy, his son, his family and friends. And what happened when you saw Chris Lighty at that New Year's party? Nothing really. Went and shook somebody's hand that was with us, and me and Jimmy was standing there. So we said, there go that clown right there. And Chris walked away. Now, prior to this incident that night, where were you? We were at Jimmy's house having dinner. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 50. Do you recognize this photograph? Yeah, on the patio. Who is this? That's me and Jimmy. Which one is you? The one on the right. And the left is Jimmy. Where was this photograph taken? On his patio. Government offers Government Exhibit 50. Received. Moving forward a little bit in time, did there come a time when you spoke to Jimmy about action he wanted to take against Chris Lighty? Chris had some dude that was supposed to be allegedly a friend of his, and he had told Jimmy he'll give him an address of where him and Chris was meeting at. He said, but just don't kill him. Who was this who said this? Some guy that was supposed to be a friend of Chris? How did you learn about it? From Jimmy. So what did Jimmy tell you, if anything, he wanted to do? Said he just wanted to give Chris a leg shot. What's a leg shot? Have him shot in the leg. So did the defendant ask you to do anything in relation to this? One night he hit me up on the BlackBerry and was like, yo, light-skinned dude gonna be at this restaurant in Midtown somewhere in Manhattan. He said, see if you can get somebody to come through and handle that. Did you know who he meant when he said light-skinned dude? Yeah, Chris Lighty. What was he telling you to do? Have somebody come through and give him a leg shot?
So when I'm hearing something like that, just come through and give him a leg shot, right? Just come through and give him a leg shot. Does that sound like someone trying to kill someone? It sounds like he's trying to warn somebody, right? Am I wrong? Doesn't that sound like you're trying to just warn somebody? Not necessarily trying to kill them. If I'm beefing with someone and I'm trying to just get rid of them out of here, and I'm trying to line them up, why would I just line them up to give them just a leg shot? Think about that.
You mentioned he said this to you on a BlackBerry. Was that your encrypted BlackBerry? Yes. Where did he say Chris Lighty would be? At some restaurant in Manhattan. And what did you do, if anything? I said okay and put the phone down, kept watching TV, hit him back a few minutes later and was like, yo, wait for my guy to hit me back, but I don't think it's going to happen. Then he hit me back asking me what's up, and I was like, nah, I don't think we're going to be able to come through. And then he was like, all right. Where were you at this time? I was at home. Where was home? It was in Jersey. And when you responded to the defendant, what were you telling him? I was telling him that I couldn't get nobody to do it. Did you look for somebody to do it? Nah, I told him it was a bad idea. Why did you think it was a bad idea? It was all going to point back to us. By that time, a dude, Lodi Mac, had got knocked off, so I was going to paper. It was a lot of going on with the drugs. You know, Stash House had got raided. It was just too much going on to be having Chris clapped in the leg. Chris was a square. His father was ex-law enforcement. Nobody had time for that nonsense, man. So it's like, Abdul, this shit is a bad idea right now. When said Chris was a square, what do you mean by that? He wasn't in the street, man. He had no street affiliation. Who gonna just walk up and shoot him in the leg for no reason? Do you remember approximately when this is? Probably had went to 09. Did you speak with Jimmy about this afterwards? Yeah, we spoke. He was just like, it could have got done. I was like, how, bro? I said, a loud shot in Midtown Manhattan, somebody going to jail, bro. And he was like, look, it could have got done. If I was around, I could have did it myself. Did you have any other conversations with Jimmy about Chris Lighty? Nah, another time Tori was setting up on him down at this restaurant in Houston. The same dude who was supposed to be Chris' friend was lining him up again. And Tori was sitting on him down at Houston's. And I found out about it, hit Tori up. What is Houston's? A restaurant. Where? They have them all over, but this one was down on Park and in the 20s. So what did the defendant tell you Tori was doing? Was sitting on Chris down there. What does that mean? Sitting there waiting for him to come out of Houston's to put the leg shot in him? And so what event? You said you contacted Tori, is that correct? Yeah, Tori is like, yo, it don't look good down here. There's a police car right in front of Houston's. I was like, all right, bro, you need to just spread out then. Just go ahead and leave. He said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. What did you mean by spread out? Leave. What did Tory tell you he was there to do? Give him a leg shot. Give who a leg shot? Chris Lighty. Did Tory say whether he was by himself or with others? He said he had his shooter with him. And how was it if you know that the defendant was getting information about the location of Chris Lighty? Somebody that was cool with Chris Lighty. How do you know that? From the defendant, from Jimmy. What did he tell you? He said he had somebody who was cool with Chris Lighty giving him information. Did you ever talk with the defendant about any other members of Chris Lighty's family? One time we were at leaving SOBs from a function. He had Jason drive him in this red Expedition that D had. Whose red Expedition? D. It was an older Expedition. Jason was driving him in it. And then where were you? We was downtown Manhattan at this point, called SOBs. What kind of spot is SOBs? Like a bar, lounge, entertainment. And we were leaving there, and he said he had a line on Chris Lighty brother that live up in Westchester, and he was going up there to check it out and was going to have Jason drive him. Spoke to him afterward and said he seen the dude up there. He sat on him for a while, and he let some shots off at him. He said he think he hit him. He don't know, he said, but he let a few rounds off on him with his .22 with a silencer. So you had a conversation with the defendant outside of SOBs, is that correct? Yes. And was anyone else present for that conversation? It was just me and him talking. It was other people there, but it was just him and I talking. Did he leave? Yeah, him and Jason left. Did you see him leave with Jason? Yes. And then afterwards, you said you had a conversation about what had happened? Yes. What did Jimmy say he had done? He said he sat up there for a while, sat on him, saw the dude, and he let some rounds off at him. What gun did you say he had? His .22 with a silencer. Did he talk about other members of G Unit at this time? No. Now, I am going to direct your attention to August of 2009. Did you have any conversations with Jimmy related to G Unit feud at that time? He was going down to Miami for the weekend, Kez's birthday. We was throwing him a party and we was all going down there. He met me uptown by the barbershop because we had to talk about, I was asking him his opinion. I was like, yo, should I still mail this, ship this work in, or just wait until we get back from Miami? You said a barbershop. What barbershop was that? It was a barbershop I used to get my hair cut in Harlem on 145th between Amsterdam and Broadway. You met with the defendant there? Yes. What were you talking about? I was asking his opinion. I was just like, yo, y'all gonna be out of town in Miami. I said, should I just have this work shipped in? Because he was leaving on a Thursday. I know I was leaving on a Thursday. I said, so should I have it shipped in, just held at the stash house, or just wait till we get back? What was the it? The coke. We had some work coming in from LA, so we was going over that. And so it was a sidebar. He was like, yo, when you see Tory man, tell him to give Slim some money. Slim told me they only gave him $1,000 and he just came home and that ain't no money. Dude making money right now. Tell him give him more than that. Slim wasn't just working for me. I was like, all right. He said, by the way, can I stop you for one moment? Who is Slim? Slim, Jimmy homeboy. I don't know him. Have you ever met him? Nah. You ever spoken to him? No. You knew him as Jimmy's friend? Yes. What did he tell you about Slim? Tell Tory to give him some money. He just came home. Did he say where he had just come home from? Yeah, from jail. And why did he say you should tell Tori to give him money? He said tell him Slim wasn't just working for me, he was working for him too. Then he said, by the way, Slim was locked up with the dude, Lodi Mac, and the dude didn't know that Jimmy and Slim was cool. He have said Lodi Mac was up there bragging about smacking his son. You know, just talking reckless. He said him and Slim still in contact. Slim befriended the dude, and Lodi Mac on his way home, he said, so Slim gonna stay in touch with him, so he gonna possibly line him up when he get home.
So that was how Lodi Mac actually really got lined up. He didn't know that he was cool with the guy in jail as well. But tying in Chris Lighty, of course, let's rewind back to the leg shot, of course, right? Now, on top of the leg shot, them laying on Chris Lighty's brother, then later seeing them on again, someone else giving information, which there could have only been two people at the time doing that. That was either Diddy, who he was managing at the time, or the assistant, Blue Williams. Now, of course, we don't have to show who Blue Williams is because not necessarily important. But Blue Williams was another person that was of interest when Chris Lighty passed away. But of course, Blue Williams had nothing to gain except for him taking on Primary Wave. So that's no different than, say, for example, the killing of Mo 3, where the manager had more to gain than lose with Mo 3 dying. Blue didn't necessarily have more to gain with Chris dying. He had more to lose. He had way more to lose. Because Chris was the brains of the operation. Think of Pinky and the Brain. If Brain die, Pinky ain't gonna do shit but run around the cage. So, Brain dead, Pinky ain't moving nowhere. So that eliminates Blue out the picture. But like I said, if we're thinking about the leg shot and the whole warning thing, I'm thinking about the fact that, like I said, Diddy is being managed by Chris Lighty at this time. So who else will be running around with this gentleman? Who else will be giving information to Jimmy Henchman of all people? If it wasn't Mr. Sean Combs, allegedly. Who else will be close to Chris Lighty that would even have remote contact with Jimmy Henchman other than Diddy? I'm just putting two and two in here together. Now, on top of that, if we're thinking of the fact that Diddy still has big connections with Jimmy Henchman, you are now being managed by Chris Lighty. Chris Lighty has the beef with Jimmy Henchman. You are now also an informant, as well as you are giving information allegedly to Jimmy Henchman of where Chris Lighty is. Each and every time. It now answers the question that I was asking before. Why the fuck would you sign to Violator management when you had your own entertainment label yourself? You had your own entertainment label with Bad Boy, your own internal management team and staff, and connections out the wild fucking zoo. What would you need Chris Lighty for? If you weren't trying to line him up as well. Considering Press Play was not the big success that we all thought you thought it would be, other than the Keisha Cole record. Last night, couldn't even get an answer. Tried to call, wouldn't even let me die. Just saying, that was the highlight of Press Play album. So of course Chris Lighty did his job, but in hindsight, Diddy, you were doing your job by being your informant self, laying on Chris Lighty and helping Jimmy Henchman find him. Now, back to the leg shot and all these other warning shots. Doesn't it sound like somebody owes money more than to do a beef? I'm trying to beef with somebody. I might be trying to get them out of here. I'm not trying to say, hey, stop fucking with me and give you a leg shot. We trying to get you out of here at that point. Let's couple that with what Yayo said. Chris is a lot more confident and stronger with G-Unit around him. This almost is starting to sound like Chris Lighty signed protection from Jimmy Henchman. But why did he sign protection? Is the question. Because like I said, it is starting to sound like somebody owed somebody more than somebody had a beef with somebody. If you get what I'm saying. It's starting to sound pretty interesting.
Let's get the witness and continue. The witness is on the stand, Your Honor. Forgive me, I didn't even look. Okay, let's go. Mr. McLeod, you are still under oath. Brian McLeod, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Mr. McLeod, when we left off yesterday, you were talking about your time in the Tombs with Mr. Roseman. Do you remember that? Yes. Did there come a time when you were released from the Tombs? Yes, I was transferred to Rikers Island route to go upstate to finish my 2 to 4 concurrent sentence. And did you finish that sentence? Yes, I did. When were you released? December 10th, 1998. After being released, were you on parole? Yes. Did you commit any crimes on parole? Yes, I returned to selling narcotics, crack in the Midtown Manhattan vicinity, and I was arrested subsequently on June 16, 1999. Following that arrest, what happened? I was taken to Rikers Island where I received a 2 to 4 sentence, ran concurrent with the parole violation. Did you serve that sentence? Yes, I did. When did you get out? I was released to work release February 2nd, 2001, and I remained at Fulton Work Release Facility until April 24, 2001, where I was released on regular parole. After being released on parole in April 2001, did there come a time when you got a job? Yes. Where? Well, in work release that February, I worked at Popeyes. It's a chicken spot on 13th and 1st. And then in May of 2001, I worked as a GED and math coordinator at Fortune Society. What is the Fortune Society? It's a not-for-profit that specializes in helping at-risk youth and ex-offenders and people who are HIV/AIDS positive, and it's like a social advocacy, counseling, educational agency in New York City. When you worked at Fortune Society, where did you report to work? I think the address is 53 West 23rd Street. In Manhattan? Yes. So that's 23rd and what's the cross? It's closer to 6th. It wasn't between Broadway and 6th, but it's closer to 6th. What was your work schedule? Monday through Friday, basically 9:30 to 9 to 5:30. Were you paid for that? Yes, I was. Did there come a time when you worked for James Roseman, the defendant? Yes. When did you start working for Roseman? I would go see Jimmy regularly, but in 2002, he expressed a need to have someone be a manager in the evening at the studio, so I would say around April, May of 2002. What was Roseman doing at the time? Roseman was managing his artists and running his label. Did he have a company? Yes. What was his company called? At the time, it was Henchman Entertainment. Did the name of the company later change? Yes. What did it change to? Czar Entertainment. Did what the business change or just the name? Just the name change? Who did Roseman manage? He managed Mike Tyson, The Game, Mario Winans, Sharissa, Black Rob, Craig Mack. That's off the top of my head. When you say The Game, who is The Game? He's a West Coast artist that was signed to Dr. Dre and later worked with 50 Cent. What kind of artist? He's a rapper. Where was Jimmy's company, Henchman Company, located? 11 West 25th Street. Can we publish Government Exhibit 600Y? Do you recognize the street shown in this photograph? Yes. What street is that? It's 25th Street. And can you see in the photo the entrance to the building where Jimmy's company was located? Yes. Can you describe for the jury where it is in the photo? There's an awning that says Noir Blanc, and it's a little past that, and there's a 7-Eleven on the partition that comes out. How far was Jimmy's company and his office from Fortune Society? Right around the corner, literally. I would go up the block from 23rd Street and cut through. I think it was like some little toy something, or on 23rd, led out to 24th, and then I would just come around the corner. So a 5-minute walk. How did you become involved in working for Roseman's business? Jimmy and I met, and he expressed a need to have someone at the studio, and I was always there periodically off and on. So I just stepped in to fill the position. What did you do at the company?
The car getting shot up. So here's where we're going to start getting into the time where Chris's car was actually shot up by Jimmy Henchman.
He was concerned about the people abusing phone privileges, computers, damaging property, stealing. There may be something that just needed to be kind of reined in to keep a check on the bills, the expenses that were accruing as a result of people kind of not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So could you say I was there to do that? And when you say he, are you talking about Roseman? Yes. How often did you work at the company? Pretty regularly, Monday through Friday. What time of day would you work? It would be after I left my other job, so 6-ish to midnight, sometimes later. Did you get paid for what you did? No. Did Roseman give you compensation in any way? Well, if I needed something, Jimmy would, if I asked him for it, he would give me something. And how much money would Roseman give you around this time? Well, I was working and a lot of people came to Jimmy for things, so I tried to be as self-sufficient as possible. But it might be a couple hundreds, it might be 50, it might be a haircut, it might be a cab, something of that nature. Did you have any other arrangement with Roseman relating to music? Jimmy always made it known if I had an artist or if I had someone who wanted to record, that the studio was there as long as I went through the proper channels that could happen. At the time, did anyone else who you were in the Tombs with, Roseman with, work for Roseman? Derek was always around, and when Jonathan Brown came home from jail in 2002, he was always around. Okay, can we publish Government Exhibit 16? Who is that again? Jonathan Brown. And can we publish Government Exhibit 5? Who is that? Derek Grant. What, if anything, did Grant do for Roseman? Grant would accompany Roseman to events. There were a couple of times where Grant, you could say, acted as muscle for him. You could say he was sort of security. Are you familiar with the company called Violator Records? I am. What is Violator Records? It's a company similar to Roseman's. It's a management. It was ran by Mona Scott and Chris Lighty. Directing your attention to the period from around 2001 to 2002. During that time period, did there come a time when you spoke to Grant about an act of violence relating to Violator Records? Yes, he told me that he had just put a couple of shots into, I guess there was like a glass partition or awning at the Violator office. and we were leaving the office, and he explained to me that he just put a couple of shots into that glass. What were you and Grant doing when he told you this? We were just talking, and I think we were about to both leave. We were both leaving. We were at the studio, and we were both leaving the studio. So in the elevator and walking out the door, he explained this to me. Did Grant explain why he did that? Not actually. Objection, Your Honor. Yes or no? Just answer yes or no. Yes or no? Did Grant explain why he did the shooting? No. Did Grant tell you anything about whether he was going to be compensated for the shooting? He said Jimmy was going to give. Answer it. Yes or no? Yes. What did he say? He said Jimmy was going to give him a half a kilo of cocaine. Before that conversation, did Grant ever say anything about having the problem with Chris Lighty or Violator? No. Can we publish Government Exhibit 6? Who is this? This is Jason. Do you know his full name? Jason Williams. Did Jason Williams work for Roseman's company when you did? Yes. Based on what you observed, what, if anything, did Williams do at the company? Jason was an assistant to Rosemond. Initially, when I met him, he would store contracts. He would handle emails, take care of scheduling, phone calls, messaging, things around the studio. After that, he became Jimmy's driver and still acted in the same capacity. And in the early 2000s, what kinds of tasks did Jason perform for Rosemond? Objection, Your Honor. Time period. Remind me? Early 2000s. I'll allow it. You could answer the question. Early 2000s, Jason would be, for lack of a better word, an administrative assistant and sometimes driver. Did you observe Jason interact with Rosemond? Yes. How would you describe Jason's relationship with Rosemond? He looked up to Jimmy. He respected him. He saw Jimmy as a mentor. Objection to the categorizing things, the characterizations that he is using. I think his testimony should be limited to what he saw. He is testifying about what he observed. It's overruled. You can answer. It was a paternal or an avuncular relationship. In this parental relationship, who was the parent? Jimmy. Who was the child? Jason. Did you observe Jason Williams interact with Derek Grant? Yes. How would you describe the relationship between Grant and Jason Williams? During the same time period? Yes. Initially, Jason and Derek, they had a love of video games. They liked similar music. I would say like brothers, friends. Did you ever observe them play video games together? Yes. Where? At the studio. Earlier, you described a shooting that Grant did at Violator Records. Did there come a time when you learned of another act of violence against Violator Records? From Grant? No, just another act of violence, not asking about whether Grant did it. Did there come a time when you learned of another act of violence against Violator Records? Objection to form, Your Honor. Overruled. You can answer the question. Either late 2002 or early 2003, cold outside. I think it was early 2003. It was a Friday night and we were en route to a function at Cipriani's, and it was Jonathan Brown, myself, and Rosemond. And Rosemond had been trying to get in contact with Chris Lighty to discuss something to do with the meeting. And apparently Chris was ignoring his attempts to communicate with him. And minutes before we all left together, Jimmy went downstairs by himself. I'll say about 10 minutes later, he called us meaning Jonathan Brown and myself, and we came downstairs, and when we got in the car, he explained that he had just put a couple of shots into Chris Lighty's car because, he was ignoring him. And at that very moment, his phone rang. It was Chris Lighty, and he explained that I'm not ignoring you. I've just been out of town, real busy. And we just all looked at each other, and I said, that's God.
That's God, all right, because let's backtrack a bit. Chris Lighty put some holes in the car, and all of a sudden Chris Lighty calls like, hey, I'm not ducking. You know, I'm just out of town. Interesting. Again, this is starting to sound more like someone owed someone more than someone had a fear of someone or even beefing. The more I am hearing about this, and the more I am putting this with 2 and 2 together, and thinking about the fact that Yayo said that when G-Unit got around, Chris started to poke his chest out more. Not that he was a punk, but he started to be a little bit more confident in things. And now I'm hearing this here in the statements that after Jimmy put holes in the car, let's run it back real quick just so we have better context of things, right?
Ready to discuss something to do with the meeting, and apparently, Honor, overruled. You can answer the question. Either late 2002 or early 2003, cold outside. I think it was early 2003. It was a Friday night, and we were en route to a function at Cipriani's, and it was Jonathan Brown, myself, and Roseman. And Roseman had been trying to get in contact with Chris Lighty to discuss something to do with the meeting. And apparently, Chris was ignoring his attempts to communicate with him. And minutes before we all left together, Jimmy went downstairs by himself.
So Jimmy's trying to call Chris Lighty and discuss something with him, right? So once again, does it sound like they're beefing around this time? Around 2002, 2003? No, right? And this is also around the time that he's just now signing 50 Cent, right? Let's think about that. Mr. Tougher. Objection to form, Your Honor. I don't know why it's... okay, Slim. Okay. Anyway, I'm just thinking about the context of what, like I said, what Yayo had just said. This is either late 2002 or early 2003. This is before G-Unit is established with Chris Lighty. Right? G-Unit had not necessarily gotten with Chris Lighty just yet. Because when Jimmy Henchman puts those holes in the car, Chris says, hey, I have, I'm not ducking you or anything like that. I just hadn't gotten back to you yet. Doesn't that sound like someone, not necessarily was beefing with someone, but that started to sound more like Chris owed Jimmy. Don't you think?
I'll say about 10 minutes later, he called us meaning Jonathan Brown and myself, and we came downstairs, and when we got in the car, he explained that he had just put a couple of shots into Chris Lighty's car because, he was ignoring him. And at that very moment, his phone rang. It was Chris Lighty, and he explained that I'm not ignoring you. I've just been out of town, real busy. And we just all looked at each other, and I said, that's God. And we pulled off. Where were you and Jonathan Brown and Roseman when you got into the car? Where was this? This was on 25th Street. Were you guys at the company, at Jimmy's company's office before you got into the car? Yes. Who was it that you said that put shots into Chris Lighty's car? Jimmy said this. Who was it who described to you that he did that because Lighty had not been returning his call? Jimmy did. Which car did you guys get in? I think it was a black Lexus. Did there come a time when you stopped working at Roseman's company? Yes. Roughly what year? The end of 2003. Why did you stop working at the company? Jimmy was cleaning house, getting rid of a lot of riffraff. The studio was getting out of control, and myself and a couple more guys were actually engaging in the same activity we were supposed to be deterring, and that activity was smoking marijuana in the steps of the building where the studio was. How would you describe your relationship with Roseman after that? Nothing changed. It's just that I wasn't at the studio anymore. After leaving the studio, did there come a time when you were arrested in a drug case? Yes. When were you arrested? August 29, 2004. Where were you when the arrest took place? I was in an apartment in Woodside, Queens. Who did the apartment belong to? The apartment belonged to Jonathan Brown. Can we publish Government Exhibit 16?
Okay, so, because let's not get too far out of context with that. So, once again, if we are thinking about what was said in those excerpts, in those scripts, let's say those transcripts, it is starting to sound like to me that Chris Lighty allegedly owed Jimmy Henchman money. If we're following along here. And Diddy signing to Violator management was to keep tabs on the money. Remember that saying, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. It would seem that Diddy was sent over there as an informant to infiltrate Violator management for Jimmy Henchman. Now, here's the other thought to that. Or should I say the concluding thought to that. Busta Rhymes had a very interesting tidbit to things.
His life changed when this woman came into his life. I'm not going to dive too much into that part, but I'm definitely going to say that Chris's life changed not for the better when she came around. So, once that happened, it started to change the energy amongst the Violator family. And I really wish, because I don't want this to be heard in a way where it seemed like I'm shitting on the woman, because I'm not shitting on the woman. I'm acknowledging the reality of the situation. As you can see, I'm not saying nothing bad about the woman. I'm just talking about, I'm acknowledging a time period where a change transpired in a significant way, and it happened after this woman came around.
So what Busta's alluding to is that when Veronica came around and Chris married her, that was when the pressure of Chris's life actually started to increase. So real quick, I want to read this excerpt here from the St. Louis American from the wife, or should I say an article that she was included in. Now, in an emotional interview outside her Riverdale townhouse, Veronica Lighty blasted reports that her husband Chris killed himself over an argument with her. My husband was too smart of a man. He was a genius. No smart man is going to leave his children for fighting with his wife, she told the Daily News in her first public comment since the founder and chief of Violator Management took his life Thursday morning. That makes absolutely no sense. We had a passionate relationship. We fought all the time, she added. Reports suggested that Lighty, the longtime manager who worked with the likes of Mariah Carey and Busta Rhymes, etc., owed $5 million to the IRS and was heartbroken over his wife filing divorce. She said, I had filed divorce last year, talking about 2011, but she retracted it. I don't know why my thing's acting up right now. She retracted it 2 days before Father's Day, and that was the gift to him. She also noted that they had sold the Chelsea apartment for $5.6 million and moved to an equally luxurious Riverdale townhouse. So even if they owed that $5 million, it would have got paid off before he bought the new house. The Associated Press reported Friday that Lighty had used the proceeds from the sale of the Chelsea apartment to pay off most of the IRS debt, but that he still possibly owed the $330,000 in the state and federal taxes. Which, like I said earlier, we already confirmed, even if he did, 50 would have paid that off. So once again, it begs that question. Diddy didn't have nothing to do, well, not even begs the question, it pretty much confirms the question now. If Lighty wasn't killed over no money, he wasn't killed over no money. As far as, you know, he wasn't killed for Kim Porter. I'll say that. He definitely wasn't killed over Kim Porter. And if he was killed over money, he was not killed over money that he owed to the IRS or anything like that. It would have been money that he owed to Jimmy Henchman. And who else better to shed light on that than someone that was extremely close to him?
But if they ain't burdening you with, they complaining, then what the fuck you gonna burden them with yours for? Do your job. I was with Chris the day before he died. I was on my first transformation journey. Chris saw me, I was in the best shape of my life. Not as crazy as now, but I was, for the first time, it looked like it magnified differently because it was the first time.
Prior to Big Bang Theory or after Big Bang Theory?
This was right around the time that, no, it's my second time getting in shape because I got in shape the first time for Big Bang, and that was 06. Chris died in 2012. This is my second time getting in shape. And Chris had merged with
Michael Owens?
Michael Owens. No, not Michael Owens.
The management company downtown in East Village.
16th Street.
Yeah, 16th Street.
With CeeLo Green was with them. Primary Wave. Primary Wave. Chris had merged with Primary Wave and Blue was there. Blue was there. From Family Tree.
Yeah.
I come to see Chris, and for a few months before this particular moment that I'm talking about, Chris Lighty was going through a few issues. I've never disclosed this, never spoke about this. Chris was having some issues, and he wasn't, from the outside looking in, it was like he was going through some serious shit, and he had to go to these retreats in Connecticut. At least that's where I thought it was, but it was outside of New York. And whatever he was going to do, it was to fix and help him find a different kind of resource to balance out his spiritual, mental equilibrium. I don't really know exactly what it was that he was going through, but I know it was for the first time I've ever seen Chris since Rush Management days in 89 and 90. We started with him. To that time frame, it was looking like Chris' spirit was broken. I was seeing Chris for the first time in a way that seemed like he was ghost in a shell. You know, that Japanimation series?
Yeah.
it looked like he was a ghost in a shell. It was like he was alive, but he wasn't alive.
He wasn't
no
really
more.
there.
Right. I was hearing things, I was seeing things. I ain't disclosing all of that on this interview. But what I do know is that what it was doing to him it wasn't good.
So Busta basically knows. Now we all know Busta was very close to 50 Cent at the time. So that also, if we're thinking about that, we also knows that he was close to Dre at the time. That whole Violator management camp was very close at the time. Busta knows that there was beef with Chris Lighty and Jimmy Henchman. That's why he won't say exactly what what Chris Lighty was stressing over. He knows that Chris Lighty and Jimmy Henchman were going through things. But he's also not disclosing the fact that Chris Lighty was actually possibly owing Jimmy Henchman at the time and what their actual real beef was. Which is why he's being very mysterious as far as the actual stresses of Chris Lighty.
So, Chris he's a man's man. And I think a very challenging thing about our reality, especially as black men, is we're not really allowed to disclose vulnerability. You know what I'm saying? You ain't really allowed to show weakness. And we also was living in a time, and I ain't talking about then, technology was a little different, but standards wasn't. And when I say that, I'm saying that to say, you can't let another nigga know when you in a fucked up situation because that man might use that information against you. So even when you really need help, reaching out to somebody for it was scary to do. And can you imagine what that was like for a man that was responsible for making sure that we had all the help we needed when we needed it?
Right.
He was our manager. He had to manage our lives.
Real shit.
Neglecting managing his own.
Who was managing his?
Right.
Feel me? Who could he call to help him manage his?
Right.
But whenever we needed him, he helped us manage ours. That's a very scary place to be in. That's a very heavy place to be in.
From Puff Daddy to you.
He had me, Puff. I'm not talking about heyday Violator days. I'm talking about primary wave Violator days. He had me, Mary, and Diddy.
That's a pressure in itself. Because at around that time, we're talking about, like he said, primary wave. We're talking about prime artists that were in their prime at the time. I was a little bit more upset at Diddy than anything when I listened back to the Press Play album and heard that Tell Me record with Christina Aguilera. It makes you mad when you have to hear some of these records from those legends and realize some of the things that they've done getting there in Hollywood. It really does put a burden on you a little bit. But Busta's very right. At the time, Chris Lighty had the elite of the elite in the music business. That was a huge pressure to have on him.
Excuse me, Mariah and Diddy. Big up to Mary J. Blige, by the way, everybody. He had me, Mariah, Diddy. Nori, you still was there during the primary wave, or you slid already?
I'm not even sure.
Primary wave was who Violator merged with when Violator left 26th Street, across the street from Henchman Entertainment.
I never left Violator.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I never.
Notice how he emphasized that too when he looked at Nori, when the building was across the street from Henchman Entertainment. Again, Busta knew all too well about the infamous dealings in the street with Jimmy Henchman and Chris Lighty.
No, we in the primary way.
I never came back since these niggas got shot up.
Okay, but that's
shit
my
got
point.
shot up. Y'all taking this shit too far.
That's why I'm saying.
I never came back.
Pulling up no more, so
I got my
I
own
ain't
office.
still rocking. So that's why I asked. But what I'm saying is, fast forward with all of the shit that I was seeing on my bro, which was concerning in itself, was Bus, you look incredible. I want to come train with you. Chris. I'm talking about Chris. He wanted to come and train with me. He had an assistant that became a management rep for mine that I don't fuck with no more, but I'm not nasty. I'm not talking about this nigga, bro. Don't say his name to me, please.
Please, Papa, my fault.
I know you ain't saying, you ain't do nothing wrong.
We got edits.
Yes.
We don't edit
I'm
shit,
not
but we
fucking
edit
with
that.
fuck.
Go ahead.
We're editing. I want to talk about him. Thank you. But he was cool at that time. All right. Chris, me and the talked. Chris told him pack his gym clothes in a bag to go train with me the next day. Chris got in a car with me to take him to Grand Central Station to go pick up his daughter because he was coming home from college. It's the last day I seen Chris. The next morning I get a phone call, 9-something in the morning. I wasn't told that Chris was dead. I was told that something happened to Chris. Okay, shit happens to us all the time.
Now, real quick, the name that was being redacted there, that kept being reversed, was actually Chris Lighty's assistant, Blue Williams. Apparently at the time, Busta didn't necessarily fuck with Blue Williams. There were circulating rumors that Blue Williams actually had something to do with the death of Chris Lighty at the time as well. But, let's be honest. Blue didn't necessarily have any dealings in the street. The only way Blue would have had any type of dealings with setting up Chris Lighty would have been, again, through Jimmy Henchman, which we all know Blue and Jimmy Henchman, of course, didn't get along either. So, why Busta and Blue didn't get along was completely separate.
What happened to Chris? We called Violator. I forget the young lady's name up at Violator that was working with us at the time in the Primary Wave offices when Violator had merged with Primary Wave after they left 26th Street between 5th and 6th. Spoke to the young lady on the phone. She was crying. She said Chris hurt himself. Okay. I get a call from Mona Scott. She's crying too. Mona Scott tells me something bad happened to Chris. You need to come now. I called Brooke. Again, I don't want to talk to about this dude. I don't want to call his name. But I called this dude that was working as Chris's former assistant and became a young new management rep. I called him and said, look, I'm pulling up on you. I need you to come with me and take me to Chris' crib in the Bronx.
So, let's think about that now. Busta is the closest person, if anybody, of 30 years to Chris Lighty. If it's anybody that had the actual information that was going on with Chris Lighty at the time of his death, it would have been Busta Rhymes. So, let's think about that, right? Busta gets the call and says something happened to Chris Lighty. They didn't say anything about, come quick, Busta, he shot himself in the head. Come quick, Busta, he's dead. Come quick, we just heard gunshots, we don't know what happened. All he heard was Chris hurt himself. Why was he only given the information that just he hurt himself? And then when he gets there, he's dead. Something doesn't sound right there, does it? Because if Chris Lighty supposedly shot himself in the head already, why is Busta only getting a call that Chris only hurt himself at the time? And not that he shot himself.
You've been to Chris crib.
I meet him in Manhattan. I've been to Chris crib prior to that in the city.
Never in the Bronx?
Never been to Chris crib in the Bronx.
That was
Chris
weird
had
to
a
me.
$5 million crib
In the Bronx?
in the city, 2-3 blocks away from the Violator office on 26th Street.
Okay, yeah. So was him
But
having a
he
crib
lost,
in the Bronx
he lost
weird
that
to you?
crib and went back to the Bronx.
Is that weird to you? Like,
That is weird because, again, there's shit that went down that I can't get into on this camera with who he was fucking with.
Right.
That regressed his hard work and his progress back to having to go to the Bronx.
Notice how he had to pause and say that. Again, we have to keep emphasizing the fact that Busta knew very good and damn well what was going on with the Jimmy Henchman beef. And Busta couldn't disclose that information on the podcast. He could not let everyone know that there was an actual street beef going on with Chris Lighty. The reason why he could not do that was out of respect of Chris Lighty's name. He could not talk about the dealings in the street that were going on with Chris Lighty because there might not have actually been dealings going on in the street necessarily with Chris Lighty had it not been for the fact that G-Unit was at the center of that in the street wars and the shootings. So he couldn't get in detail with that and derail the actual context of the topic.
Where he was at, he had a crib on Fifth Ave, bro. If it wasn't Fifth Ave, it was in the proximity. It was 3-4 blocks away from Violator. Park Ave. It wasn't on Park Ave, King. Because Park Ave went the other way towards the east from the Violator office. His shit was going towards the west from the Violator office.
Yeah.
But hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying, King. 26th Street Violator was a one-way going towards the west side. Park Ave was towards the east side. His crib was towards the west side. I believe it was off of 6th Avenue. Because that street went upwards, which was 6th, and his crib was like 2 blocks away from 26th, like 24th off of 6th Ave. There was a building to the right. You go inside, it was 2 multi-million-dollar condos that he connected together as one. And that became the $5 million crib. Now, not to get too much into that, Chris ended up back in the Bronx. And when we get to the crib, Chris was dead already.
you actually went to the house?
I was at the house and I watched Chris' body come out of the house in a black bag and put into a vehicle with no windows in it. An ambulance or a coroner vehicle, excuse me. I saw that myself.
Busta watched his friend of 30 years being taken out on a stretcher to the coroner. As I said before, if it's anyone that can tell the story of the day that Chris Lighty died, fuck an article, fuck anything else, it is Busta Rhymes that can tell the truth of that day, which was one of the hardest days, I'm sure, of his life, next to losing his father. For him to say that he had no idea what had happened to Chris Lighty prior to getting there, as well as he had only gotten news that something had happened to Busta, that something had happened to Chris, as if the people that were giving him the information knew more than they wanted to actually tell him. In going there, Busta actually knew that.
And I stood out there and I beefed with Mike Lighty Mona Scott, A.B. Butler, some of the other Violator members, the original Violator members, Chris, Ali, and the rest of them brothers, about where was Chris Lighty's belongings gonna go. Because everybody from Chris' side wanted his belongings out of that house and taken to a storage place that they controlled the key of. And his widowed wife at the time was trying to fight that with her family. And this was a horrible day. This day was a day where what fucks with me the most about this shit is because you know, being the first Violator artist, Chris never came to my studio sessions. You feel me? So, Chris, he started coming to my studio sessions in 2011. Mind you, I've been doing this with him since 89, 90. I signed my deal December 12th, 1989, when I was 17. I'm 48 years old now, bro. So, he never came to my studio sessions. So, you know, I used to watch when all the other incredible artists came to the roster and he was moving around with them to their movie sessions.
He set up all your incredible studio sessions.
No, he didn't set up none of my studio sessions.
Like then, no.
Chris ain't had nothing to do with my studio sessions. Chris set up all of my incredible record deals.
But I'm not gonna lie, Buzz. I don't think you needed anybody. You were set up in soundtracks.
Yeah, now I'm a micromanager. I'm hands-on about my life.
I would go with soundtracks, and they would be like, "Are you a Busta?" I'm like, "Geez, Louise."
Nah, but that's my West Indian shit though. Like, you know, my mother, she
You would take over any studio you ever like just rented.
Any studio that I had the opportunity to work in, I'm booking my own session. I'm signing my own invoice on the POs, and
To this day,
I'm paying for my own studio
I
time.
told you yesterday you was in the studio.
That's a motherfucking fact.
I get up and I'm like, oh, this nigga boss is gone, about to go to sleep.
But Chris never came to my studio sessions. So to see when LL and 50 and Missy and Nas and Mob and Nori and everybody came to this Violator family, and he was popping up to sessions and from the other artists from Rasta, and it wasn't coming to mind. That fucked with me. I'm not gonna lie.
Wow, never knew that.
It fucked with me.
Never knew that.
But the way I was raised was to not complain. It was just about doing what you needed to do to make the big homie pull up to your session.
Right.
Because nobody cares when you complain anyway. No, ain't nobody ain't listening to your complaints. They got a bunch of shit to complain about too. But if they ain't burdening you with they complaining, then what the fuck you gonna burden them with yours for?
Wow.
Do your job. So I tapped into a frequency somehow, the most high aligned stars in the universe for me, man. And I just started making some shit that made Chris feel like he needed to pull up to my sessions and my nigga.
He pulled up.
And not only did he pull up, man, he started pulling up so regularly on an unannounced level, it was almost like he had something to prove to the people that he was talking to about my shit. And he was like, oh, you don't believe me? Let me bring you to the studio so you can see that what I'm saying is truth.
Can I talk to you real
I'm not
talk?
finished. You're not going to interrupt me, Nori.
I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm going to actually fall back. I'm just
Thank you,
Love is love. Love is love.
Now, this is important to me. That's why I just want to get it off. Let me just finish this part. My brother came to the studio with his children and made me press play. He came to the studio with other movie and television execs and made me press play. He pulled up with other powerful music industry execs and made me press play as a proud big brother and a proud father of Busta Rhymes' career. So as I watched him chaperone the whole planet with 50, LL, sometimes Nori, sometimes Mob, and he wasn't pulling up to my shit. When he finally decided to pull up to my shit, and then he died.
Right.
You know how that made me feel? I'm not gonna lie. That shit fucking hurt, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, Chris sent me an email in my BlackBerry and bro was like, yo, I'm proud of you. This is 2011. I'm proud of you, bro. He goes, you finally did it.
After 30 years, the year before Chris Lighty dies, he finally gives Busta his flowers. And Busta finally gets to hear those words from him.
Pink Floyd didn't record their greatest album called The Wall until their 8th album. You finally caught that train. Congratulations, Busta Rhymes. Oh, so now you telling me that and this is ELE too.
Right.
Back in 2011. I started this album in 2009, 11 years ago.
Wow.
So he tells me this in 2011, and then you die? You don't live to chaperone around the planet with me? I feel cheated. I'm being shortchanged. This ain't fair. This ain't right. This ain't right. I was the first here. I don't get my turn, nigga? I'm sorry.
Nah, you'll never be sorry.
Nah, man.
That's real shit.
So, I lose my father too while I made this album. I lose Chris Lighty and I lose my daddy making this album. Niggas wanna know why it took so long to put out an album. I was going through all kind of shit, nigga. I had to lose weight. I had to find refuge in people that didn't mean as much to me as Chris and my father. And I started to walk around with this smile like I was doing well.
Right.
That's a hard thing to fucking do. And I ain't looking for no sympathy. I just want to share because I want niggas to know pain that you go through too. You can look at me and see your pain in me. Because ain't none of us exempt from suffering.
Right.
That's all this is about that I'm sharing. And it's therapeutically beautiful for me because I'm finally in a space in my life where I'm comfortable enough to share it. Now, how long it took for me to start having these kind of conversations with the public? Now, how many years I've been walking around with this shit, afraid to talk about it because I don't want niggas to use this vulnerability against me?
They can't.
Nah, it's strength, man.
They can't.
You don't know that at the time when you're going through it, though, Nori.
Right. Respect.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree with that part as well. But I'm saying they can't. They because I feel the same thing that you feel. Like we all feel that.
Nori, you asked a question that I ain't even respond to yet. You said, did Chris kill himself because you can't believe it?
I can't. Is it me?
I'm going to say this to you.
Is it me?
I don't want to believe it. What he was going through, it won't allow, what we know of Chris won't allow us to accept that possible reality. But what he was going through, I don't know if we understood the significance of how serious it was, neither. Feel me? So, I don't have the answer for that, but I'm gonna leave you with that. You can take that and walk with it and figure out what it is that you think I might be saying. But what I am saying is there ain't no statute of limitation to a murder, neither. So,
a lot.
I ain't gonna stop till I get to the bottom of it. I need to take a break.
Yeah.
As he should. As he should. Because very well said there. And, you know, Busta's right. There ain't no statute of limitations to a murder. He knows what we broke down today. And the two gentlemen that he was last dealing with, I should say, that have something to do with all this. And I do believe that the reason we are finding out about all of this information now, but the reason that we are even hearing that, you know, there's a possibility that Diddler have something to do with Chris Lighty's death is because long ago 50 Cent hired some high-powered team of investigators for Chris Lighty's death.
My sources confirmed to me that at the request of Chris Lighty's grieving mother, superstar artist 50 Cent has brought in a high-powered team to investigate the hip-hop mogul's death. This comes as Fox 5 News has obtained a copy of his will, and it leaves everything to his wife. This is the cover of Chris Lighty's will. His legal first name is Daryl, but it's what's on page 3 that's raising eyebrows. Except for a fund set aside for his children, it says if he is survived by his wife, quote, I give my entire residuary estate, real and personal, to her, end quote. One of the country's top attorneys, Arthur Aidala, explains.
Under the will, his wife has a lot of power. She's the executor of the will, and she also inherits everything that's in the will, meaning she's in charge of distributing the assets, but she's the one who's receiving them as well.
Lighty managed the careers of superstars like 50 Cent and Diddy and orchestrated multi-million-dollar deals. He died last month, allegedly from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after an argument with his wife, Veronica. The will, drafted in 2007, provides a separate $1.6 million trust fund for his children. Aidala says it shows great care and planning, especially for a man who at that time was only in his late 30s.
It was well thought out. He clearly loves his family, and he did the right thing. He went out, he hired an expert in this area of work and wrote a document that protects and covers his wife and his children.
Lighty was laid to rest earlier this month after a star-studded send-off, but many of those who knew him still can't believe it was a suicide, as ruled by the New York City medical examiner. Former New York City medical examiner Dr. Michael Baden was called in by the family for a second autopsy. The results so far are inconclusive, but Baden spoke exclusively with me today about the case.
In my opinion, the cause of death, clear as a gunshot wound to the head. The manner of death, accident, suicide, homicide, still is pending till all those tests are done.
Now, sources also tell me that Lighty was not deep in a bottomless financial hole and that he had just secured a world tour for 50 Cent for next year, which would have brought him millions of dollars. The new investigation is being led by 50's attorney Scott Lehman and private investigator Les Levine.
So as I said before, the money would have been paid off. The money would have been paid off already. It wouldn't have been a need. It would not have been a need for him to off himself. Just for the simple fact that he would have already had the thing paid off the following year. Any debt that he had would have been paid off the following year or the year of. He would have not needed to do any of that. But I guess what's raising Fifth's eyebrow in that, there's two things. Now, you have to put, remember I said before how this kind of sounds like the similar to Twitch situation with the wife? Now, this almost sounds like the wife was just protected in this situation, but I'm still asking myself, you know, of course the information was given how, or should I say where Jimmy was, where Chris was at the time, but it's still, the main thing here is, what did the wife have to do with this? I'm wondering now, with Chris having to write that will so early, and the wife doing a divorce but then retracting it a year beforehand, on top of Jimmy possibly owing Jimmy Henchman, forget the IRS, he already paid that, but he didn't want to pay back Jimmy Henchman. Could there have been a scenario where the diddler actually did set up Chris for the final time on this one through Veronica Lighty? Being that Veronica Lighty was supposedly the only other person in the room at the time. I could not find a verification on such. One thing's for sure, two things for certain. We do have a lot of blood trails leading from Diddler, aka Sean Combs, and Jimmy Henchman, don't we? There's a lot of blood trails that are leading to the doorstep of Chris Lighty from Diddy and Jimmy Henchman. Reason why those blood trails are leading from those two is because A, Diddy was the last person that man was managing. B, the beef with Jimmy Henchman. Those two things together, we can already conclude who was behind, necessarily, allegedly, the removal of Chris Lighty. We don't have to look any further on who was behind the removal of it. But as far as who shot the gun, if I'm looking at this will that he put together so quickly, I'm not looking too far outside the home, if you get what I'm saying. God bless to the family. Notice how also they said the mother, Chris Lighty, and 50 Cent were doing an investigation. Didn't say nothing about Veronica, did it? Didn't say Veronica was doing an investigation, did it? Think about that. Very similar to Twitch situation. Once again, these are the signs that have Diddy and Jimmy Henchman's name all over it. The little patterns of things that are done. The little patterns of things that are done as far as the manipulation factors and having different people that are close to you actually set you up. These are the manipulation tactics of both Jimmy Henchman and Diddy. Their fingerprints are dead all over this one. But as the world turns,
God give me style, God give me grace.
God give me style, God give me grace.
God put a smile on my face.
God put the smile on my face.
God make me shine like the sun.
God
make me shine like the sun. Sometimes I feel like I'm the one. Sometimes I feel like it ain't my fault. I just reach for style. I'm hot, I breaks it down. It ain't my fault. You can't break it down the way I break it down. Listen, you can call me what you want, black and ugly, but you can't convince me the Lord don't love me. When my CDs drop, they sell the best. You call it luck, why can't it just be I'm blessed? I'm a track star running through life, chasing my dream. Best deal I made was trading the mic for that triple beam. I zone off thinking, is there really heaven or hell? If so, what happens to a changed man that dies in a cell? I need no answers to these questions, cause time will tell. Got a date with destiny, she's more than a girl. Don't much good come from me, but my music is a gift given from God, so I'ma use it. Yeah. God give me style, God give me grace. God give me style, God give me grace. God put a smile on my face. God put the smile on my face. God make me shine like the sun. God make me shine like the sun. Sometimes I feel like I'm the one. Sometimes I feel like it ain't one. I just